To begin with, I want to give thanks to all of our ancestors and the ancestors of this place. Our world is lost and wandering, as we all know from the many threats to human rights, the environment, democracy, and common human decency. Because of all the chaos and conflict, people are becoming more prone to anxiety, depression, exhaustion, rage, stress-related illnesses, or just becoming numb. Quite simply, our current way of approaching things is not working. However, when things are beyond our current abilities, that can be a powerful catalyst forcing us to evolve. Just as our ancient ancestors had to adapt to changing conditions and evolve to become Homo sapiens, the supposedly wise humans, now we need to take the next step in our evolution and become actually wise, or awakened humans. Many people are turned off from traditional religion, government, and other institutions that used to unify us. So it falls to us ordinary people to point the way, to those of us who believe in love, compassion, consciousness, and harmony. Fortunately, art can be just as effective a path of transformation as any other wisdom tradition, because art provides powerful ways to go beyond our ordinary mind and connect with the deepest parts of ourselves that are beyond words. Just as Picasso used his Guernica painting to call attention to the atrocities of war, I created my series of three-dimensional photographs called From Wandering to Illumination to call attention to the most important things I can think of, our ordinary state of wandering and the radiant state of illumination. These photographs and the corresponding book weave together my 3D multiple exposure photographs of trees, along with the ancient Greek Eleusinian Mysteries, my own journey, and our collective need to reconnect with soul and the world. As many of you may know, the Eleusinian Mysteries were one of the most well-known of the various mystery traditions in ancient Greece. For thousands of years, people came every spring and fall from throughout the ancient Mediterranean world and gathered in Eleusis, about 11 miles northwest of Athens. Almost anyone could go, men and women, slaves and free citizens, rich and poor, anybody could go if they spoke Greek and hadn't killed anyone. It was one of the great equalizers of the ancient world, a powerful collective way for people to connect directly with the divine, which drew many leading philosophers, scholars, politicians, and artists to attend, as well as ordinary people of all kinds. The Eleusinian Mysteries told the story of Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, and her daughter Persephone. This story begins with the descent, as Hades took Persephone down to the underworld one day when she was out in the meadow picking flowers. Distraught, Demeter wandered the earth, looking for her daughter everywhere, vowing to leave the earth barren until her daughter was returned. Eventually, Persephone's father Zeus intervened, forcing Hades to let her go, and Hermes brought her out of the underworld in a triumphant return to life. In this myth, people often focus on the part where Persephone ate 6 pomegranate seeds in the underworld, so she had to spend 6 months on Earth and 6 months in the underworld. However, the Eleusinian Mysteries are much more than a nature story about the barrenness of winter and the rebirth of spring. It's about 2 completely different ways of being, which we can call wandering and illumination. Here, wandering refers to our ordinary state of consciousness, driven by a combination of our ego and our unconscious. People from all over the world have different names for our ordinary state of being, like Buddhists talking about the monkey mind or grasping mind. But to the Greeks, when we are distracted or overcome by temptations, emotions, or suffering, they would say we're in hell. To them, the underworld isn't just a place, it's a state of being. However, we don't have to be stuck wandering forever, as we're reminded by Persephone's rising from the underworld and the stories of Jesus, the Buddha, Osiris, and many others from all over the world. There is a different way of being that any of us can experience, that some might call illumination, awakening, transcendence, or satori, which can completely transform us greatly increasing our creativity, our effectiveness in the world, and our connection with soul and the divine. In a crucial part of the Eleusinian Mysteries, the initiate would be shown a sacred object, a sheaf of grain harvested in silence, which represents our soul, higher self, or the deepest part of ourselves. After all, each of us has a divine spark, but it's usually kept hidden away in the underworld of our unconscious, and we often find it only after a period of wandering. One reason why the Eleusinian Mysteries were so effective at introducing people to the divine may have been due not just to the careful stagecraft of torchlit processions at night, dramatic reenactments of the story of Demeter and Persephone, and the sacred objects that would be shown, but also to some kind of hallucinogen that may have been mixed in with the wine to help participants get into an unusually calm and open state. Of course, there are many ways to get into this state besides hallucinogens. As an artist and a meditator, I've noticed for a number of years that my 3D photographs work like traditional mandalas to help me get into a meditative state. So when I thought about creating a book and exhibition of this series, I conceived of it as a reinterpretation of the Eleusinian Mysteries. After all, in ancient times, there were many different ways to have direct collective experiences of the divine, including initiatory practices from every spiritual tradition. These days, there still are ways to have these kinds of collective experiences, but not everyone is drawn to spiritual pilgrimages or retreats, ayahuasca ceremonies, or even to modern alternatives like Burning Man. However, when we go to see art, we tend to be more open and receptive than usual, making art the ideal way to evoke wandering and illumination. Now's the time to put on the 3D glasses. As we go through the photographs, we can imagine we're wandering through a dark labyrinth, with these images lit up brightly like windows into another world, each one 40 by 40 inches, so they take up our whole field of vision. The photographs in this first part of the series are of bare trees in winter, representing the state of wandering. Keep in mind that it may take some time for our eyes to adjust to see the 3D effect fully, maybe just a few seconds for some, or a few minutes for others. To create these photographs, I start by focusing intensely on one tiny part of a tree, such as a single twig or a leaf. Then I take multiple exposures of the tree from different angles, all handheld and combined together in camera, as a sustained meditation on coming back to the same point of focus again, again, and again. When I work with a two-dimensional image on the computer, I remain very faithful to the original multiple exposures that were done in the camera, so I don't just copy the same image over and over. When I add the third dimension in Photoshop, I don't follow how the trees look in, quote, real life, since this is the dimension of imagination and soul. So I use a combination of the original image, my imagination, and any inspiration that might arrive until the photograph comes to life. The result is an extremely complex 3D image that can be used like a traditional mandala to effortlessly hold our attention. At the collective level, it's clear that our world is very much lost in a state of wandering. How else can we explain all the mass shootings, leaders trying to normalize hatred, intimidation, and dishonesty, strongmen consolidating power, corporate greed running amok, people abusing drugs, and all the road rage? It's been more than 135 years since Nietzsche said, quote, God is dead, and so many of us are turned off from traditional religion with nothing to replace it, wandering without anything that gives us direction. The concept of wandering applies to more than just obvious cases of being lost and hurting others or ourselves. For example, it's only natural to often be stuck in the monkey mind or grasping mind. With the vast amount of things we're constantly bombarded with, including everything we see, hear, taste, touch, smell, and how our thoughts can spin on and on, it's only natural that we are almost always dividing our attention, partially distracted to some extent, but still, that's wandering. Most of us don't feel like we're wandering, as we can be very productive in life, achieving things, making money, taking care of our family, and everything else we're constantly busy with. But if we feel cut off from soul, meaning, and what's really important, then we're wandering. If we feel small and alone, rather than part of something much, much greater than ourselves, that's also wandering. So, wandering is a concept that applies to the great majority of us, the great majority of the time. In the story of the Eleusinian Mysteries, it's as if Persephone was taken away to the underworld, and Demeter is wandering for so long that she forgets who she's searching for, and even forgets that she's missing anything. We're lost without knowing we're lost. For me, this image here represents the deepest and most difficult part of the journey, the dark night of the soul, which unfortunately I found myself in many times from the agonizing back pain I've been dealing with for more than 8 years. However, each time when I don't know how I can keep going, I end up finding strength I never knew I had, plus the determination to keep going no matter what, and to help others any way I possibly can. To some extent, it doesn't matter what name we use when we talk about the divine, whether we talk about God, Allah, or Yahweh, the higher self, Buddha self, capital S self, the source, the Tao, or any other name. They're all ultimately just labels for the same thing, or different aspects of the same vast oneness. However, names really do matter, because there have been thousands of years of bitter wars, violence, and genocide over these labels, continuing to this very day. And most people still don't realize that we're all talking about the same thing from really, really different perspectives, like blind people touching a vast elephant, this great mystery that we're all a part of. The time has come to end this confusion, stop hiding truths and secret traditions, dead symbolism and thick tomes. The time has come for us all to talk as clearly and openly as we can about our true nature, that of existence. Fortunately, if we realize that we're wandering, there are ways to bring ourselves back. For example, if we're distracted, upset, or stuck in a particular mood or in the monkey mind, focusing deeply on something can help, whether it's concentrating on our breath or a mantra, on a bodily practice like yoga or walking, or on an object like a traditional mandala or these photographs. As helpful as it can be to practice meditative focus and quieting the constant chatter of our minds, that's only part of the answer. The larger point of this exhibition is that it is possible to wake up from our ordinary way of being through experiences of awakening or illumination. The great majority of us still don't know that there's anything to wake up from, so I hope this work might reach at least some people who wouldn't otherwise be curious about awakening. One reason why I use photographs of bare trees in winter is because the trees aren't dead, they're just in hibernation. They're stripped down to their bare innermost self, just as a crisis can force us to let go of everything that isn't essential. As difficult as it can be when we go through a crisis, it's often only during extreme challenges that we're forced to dig deep and find a core of strength that we never knew we had. As many of you know, difficult times can have a way of opening us up and giving us glimpses of the pregnant darkness, the luminous black, or the hidden part of our soul, like Persephone imprisoned in the underworld. For example, one night when I was in a lot of back pain, I dreamed of a large black cave with beautiful glimmering diamonds on the walls, spelling the words, "Let me out." Sooner or later, we will find what we're looking for, as long as we haven't forgotten what we're seeking, such as a connection with our soul, higher self, or the divine. In the story of Demeter and Persephone, Hermes was the one who went down to the underworld to bring Persephone back. In other words, we may sometimes need someone to help us reconnect with our soul, such as by getting help from a teacher, analyst, loved one, or guide. For example, some people may need help for their energy to flow freely, as in the attunements of Reiki, the Shaktipat transmissions of Hinduism, and energetic initiations from many, many other traditions. Sometimes we all need a little help, and as Rumi said, we're all just walking each other home. When I photograph the trees, I don't generally plan the images ahead of time, and I'm often surprised at what emerges, like the Star of David in the center of this image. Meanwhile, this image reminds me of the sheaf of grain harvested in silence that is shown in the Eleusinian Mysteries just before going into the inner sanctum. It's not just a symbol of an abundant harvest, it's the seed of our soul, the divine spark within us that cannot be quenched, though it does need to be nurtured and cared for before it can burst fully into life in this world. At this point in the exhibition, we reach a dark curtain at the end of the labyrinth with a sliver of light coming from beyond. As we pass through, it may take a little while to adjust to the brightness of the space on the other side, but we would gradually see this image directly in front of us and far larger than the other images. While the previous photographs were all of bare trees in winter, the trees have now come to life, representing the state of illumination, awakening, or reconnection with soul. Awakening isn't easy to describe because it's so different from our ordinary way of being, and there are many different ways to experience it, but it may commonly involve an explosion of our energy, seeing light when our eyes are closed, such as swirls or patterns of light and color, feeling we're suddenly rushing up through a tunnel made of information and love, and seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. Eventually, we may emerge into a vast, expansive place that feels more real than real and is pervaded throughout by a great bright light. We may feel indescribable amounts of love and wisdom, may feel like a veil has been lifted and we're completely liberated. We might interact with imaginal figures who offer guidance or help us explore what seems to be another world, and at some point we may feel completely dissolved in the infinite. Sooner or later, we'll return from the experience, but how we perceive ourselves and the world will have changed completely. For me, it literally felt like an entire new dimension that unfolded, which is why this series feels so appropriate. Many people experience strong increases in various types of intelligence, such as emotional, interpersonal, kinesthetic, and so forth, as well as increases in our creativity, intuition, and resilience to deal with challenges. Besides, after an awakening experience, we no longer feel like we're lost and wandering. We know who we are, why we're here, and it's much easier to focus on what's truly important. The voice of our conscience becomes more clear and obvious, like the intense clarity of someone who's overcome a huge obstacle, knows the power of every single moment when we can focus deeply on what truly matters. And it's exactly this kind of strength and focus we need if we want to wake ourselves up and the world. I created the color photographs in this second half of the series after my awakening experience in 2014 to remind myself of the experience, to express what can't be said with words, and to remember to connect with soul no matter what challenges we face. After all, just as Persephone had to spend 6 months of every year in the underworld and 6 months on Earth, we will probably have to go back and forth between wandering and illumination over and over again. Awakening usually isn't a simple one-time experience, as life keeps giving us opportunities to react as consciously as possible. The growth pangs of our world are certainly painful, and the old forces of chaos and conflict are trying desperately to hold on to power. But these challenges will only give us the resolve we need to awaken even faster, both individually and collectively, forging us into unbreakable, radiant diamonds. As Frederick Douglass said, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. But sooner or later, we'll stop settling for wandering. We'll stop settling for the insane levels of fear, anger, sadness, jealousy, and greed that so many people think are normal. There is a time and a place for all emotions, but eventually we'll have learned what we need to learn from struggle and can find a more peaceful way of being that can remain calm no matter what storms might rage in the world around us. In the end, we may find that we already are what we've been searching for, and the secret to liberation is as simple as just being present to whatever arises, with each moment like a sheaf of grain that's picked in silence, both the harvest of everything that has come before and the seed of everything yet to come. Once we've experienced awakening ourselves, whether in a big peak experience or in a gradual process that unfolds over the years, it becomes obvious that all paths lead to the same place if we follow them far enough. There is huge potential for increased understanding between groups if we encourage dialogue about similarities and differences between awakening, individuation, being born again, and other approaches from all over the world. In practice, it often takes an entire journey to be able to be really present. So in my book, I discuss 12 tools that can help with the journey, such as how to increase our focus, generate more available energy, tune ourselves, decalcify the pineal gland, and various other steps that I've listed here. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but there are a lot of things I wish I had known years earlier, and may be relevant for others as well. For more details, see the appendix of my book or my videos on YouTube. The biggest obstacle to illumination, however, is simply the lack of interest with how busy we are and how few people understand what's truly possible. That's why I created this series, to remind myself and others to reconnect with soul and approach things as consciously as we can while giving practical tools for the journey. The time has come to throw open the doors of illumination and to finally put an end to the dark, feudal age of toxic conflict that we've been enmeshed in for far too long. Let the age of harmony begin. Peace, love, and blessings. Thank you.
Wow. So we've got 20 minutes for questions, comments.
Ryan, is your book for sale here?
Let's see. I don't have enough physical copies to offer for sale here, but it's available on Amazon, or you can feel free to email me directly, and I can send you a link if you're not able to find it. You just search for Brian J. Bush on Amazon or from Illumination. I have my other books on Amazon as well. I have 2 copies, so I can sell those eventually. So just 2. All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is the book, and folks are welcome to look at the copy that's out in the lobby as well. And if you are looking at the book, turn the images, try turning it upside down as well, because that inverts the 3D effect. And looking close up, far away makes different results as well. It's cool being able to curve the page and feel like bending the fabric of space-time.
Thank you so much. That was a really beautiful presentation, all 3, so inspiring, this much potential. Funny, right before coming here, I was on a hike, and there was a photograph near these bushes that's, actually not a photograph, a sign that said, this is in California, in the Playa Vista area, some California native plants have a dormant period. They aren't dead. They are resting. Visit the park each season to see different plants in bloom. I thought, wow, how perfect. This connection that you and I had in conversation, this was on my body map. And anyway, I'm just really in awe of the synchronicities in this room, because also with neuroscience. Anyway, I'm just in awe. There's so much I want to say.
Thank you so much. I'll just briefly mention, I can't tell you how many times I've been photographing these bare trees in winter, and somebody will walk past and say, oh, you should see this tree in summer, it's so beautiful. I'm like, well, it's beautiful then, but it's also beautiful right what's here in front of us